The silence in a hospital room is heavy. It has a weight to it, like a thick, wool blanket that you can't kick off. It smells like rubbing alcohol and old coffee, and it sounds like the rhythmic beeping of machines that are keeping someone alive. I sat in the corner, on one of those hard, plastic chairs that make your back ache after 10 minutes. My hands were folded in my lap, squeezing my fingers until the knuckles turned white. Across from me sat my mother, looking smaller than I had ever seen her, her skin a pale, waxy gray. And standing right next to her, holding her hand, was my sister, Elena. Elena looked perfect, even in a crisis. Her hair was brushed into shiny waves, her designer bag was perched on the bedside table, and she was making soft, cooing noises, like she was comforting a child. "Don't worry, Mommy," Elena said, her voice dripping with that sweetness that always made my teeth ache. "We will figure this out. We always do." The doctor, a tall man with tired eyes, cleared his throat. He looked at his clipboard, then at us. "As I was saying," the doctor said, his voice grave. "Your mother's kidneys are failing at a rapid rate. Dialysis is a temporary solution, but for her long-term survival, she needs a transplant. Soon." The room went quiet again. The machine beeped. Beep. 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 My mother's eyes, usually so sharp and critical, filled with tears. She looked up at Elena. It was an instinct. Whenever my mother needed something, joy, validation, pride, she looked at Elena. "Oh, my poor baby," Mom whispered, squeezing Elena's hand. "What am I going to do?" The doctor continued. "The waiting list for a deceased donor is 3 to 5 years. At this stage, that might be too long. The best option is a living donor. Usually, we look to immediate family first. Siblings, children." And that was the moment. That was the moment everything shifted. I saw the exact second the reality hit my sister. Elena, the golden child. Elena, who had never heard the word no in her entire life. Elena, who had received the lion's share of everything our parents had to offer, money, attention, love. She stiffened. She slowly pulled her hand away from our mother's grip, pretending to reach for a tissue. Her eyes darted around the room, looking at the floor, the ceiling, the door. Anywhere but at our mother. Then, for the first time in years, my mother turned her head. She looked past Elena. She looked into the dark corner of the room. She looked at me. "Sarah," my mother said. Her voice wasn't sweet. It was demanding, expectant. "Sarah, you're healthy, aren't you?" I felt a cold chill run down my spine. For 30 years, I had been the invisible daughter. The one who was fine. The one who didn't need anything, and therefore, got nothing. But now, suddenly, I was visible. I wasn't a daughter in that moment. I was a spare part. To understand why that look broke something inside me, you have to understand the life I lived before that day. You have to understand what it means to be the other child. Growing up, the dynamic was set in stone before I could even walk. Elena was 2 years older than me, and she was the miracle. She was beautiful, charming, and could do no wrong. If Elena drew a scribbly picture, it was framed and hung in the hallway. If I got an A on a math test, my mother would just nod and say, "That's what you're supposed to do." It wasn't just about praise, though. It was tangible. I remember my 16th birthday clearly. I had asked for a car. Not a new car, just something used to get me to my part-time job at the library. My parents sat me down at the kitchen table, their faces serious. "We just can't afford a car right now, Sarah," my dad had said, looking at his hands. "Money is tight. You can take the bus. It builds character." I accepted it. I took the bus. I worked hard. I saved my own money. 2 years later, Elena turned 16. By then, she had crashed the family sedan twice. She didn't have a job, she was focusing on her social skills, as Mom put it. On the morning of her birthday, I woke up to screaming. Happy screaming. I looked out the window. In the driveway sat a brand new, cherry red convertible with a giant white bow on the hood. Mom was crying tears of joy, hugging Elena. Dad was beaming, dangling the keys. She deserves it, I heard Mom say to the neighbor later that day. Elena is just so special. She has such a bright future. I stood in the hallway, watching them. The injustice burned in my chest like heartburn. It wasn't about the car. It never is. It was about the message. She is worth the investment. You are not. That pattern continued into adulthood. When Elena got married, my parents took out a second mortgage on their house to pay for a wedding that looked like something out of a magazine. It was lavish, excessive, and completely focused on showing off. When I got married to my husband, Mark, 2 years later, we did it at the courthouse. When we asked if they could contribute to a small dinner reception, Mom sighed, a long, dramatic sound that signaled I was being a burden. Oh, Sarah, she said, rubbing her temples. You know we're still paying off Elena's wedding. It wouldn't be fair to ask us for money right now. Besides, you're so practical. You don't need all that fuss. Practical. That was their word for me. Practical. Low maintenance. The one who didn't need love because she was strong enough to survive without it. I built a life despite them. Mark and I worked hard. We bought a small house, we had 2 beautiful kids, and we paid for everything ourselves. We didn't ask for help because we knew the answer would be no. Meanwhile, Elena drifted. She never held down a real job. She dabbled in fashion, then interior design, then life coaching. Every time she failed, Mom and Dad were there with a safety net made of cash. They paid her rent, they paid her credit card bills, they bought her groceries. She's just finding herself, Mom would tell me on the phone, usually right before asking why I hadn't visited in a month. You should be more supportive, Sarah. She's your sister. Family helps family. Family helps family. That phrase used to make me feel guilty. It used to make me feel like I was the bad person for resenting the unfairness. But sitting in that hospital room, watching my mother look at me with hungry, desperate eyes, I realized what that phrase actually meant to her. It meant that I existed to serve the golden child. It meant that my resources, my energy, and now, my actual body parts, were simply assets to be harvested when the golden child or the mother needed them. I looked back at my mother. I looked at Elena, who was now checking her reflection in the darkened window of the hospital room, avoiding eye contact with everyone. I'm healthy, I said quietly. My voice was steady, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. Good, Mom said, letting out a breath she seemed to have been holding for decades. She didn't ask if I would do it. She didn't ask how I felt. She just assumed. The doctor can start the tests today. We don't have time to waste. She turned back to Elena. Elena, sweetheart, go get yourself a coffee. You look exhausted. This has been so hard on you. Elena nodded, looking relieved to escape. Yeah. I'll go to the cafeteria. Do you want anything, Mom? Just you being happy, Mom said. Neither of them asked me if I wanted anything. I was just the donor. I was just the mechanic here to fix the broken engine so the car could keep driving. I watched Elena walk out of the room, her heels clicking on the linoleum floor. I looked at my mother, who was already closing her eyes, secure in the knowledge that her problem was solved. But deep down, a small, quiet voice in my head spoke up. It was a new voice. It wasn't the voice of the obedient daughter. It was the voice of a woman who had finally had enough. No, the voice said. I didn't say it out loud yet. But the thought was there, planted like a seed. And little did I know, that seed was about to grow into a forest that would tear our family apart. I didn't say no right away. That's the thing about being conditioned your whole life to please people, the word no feels like a foreign language. It feels dangerous. Instead, I went home to the sanctuary I had built with Mark. Walking into my kitchen, the smell of garlic and roasting chicken hit me. It was such a normal, comforting smell, but it made my stomach turn. Mark was at the stove, stirring a pot, with our 5-year-old, Leo, sitting on the counter swinging his legs. "Hey," Mark said, turning around with a smile. "How's your mom? Is it bad?" I sat down at the table, feeling the weight of the day pressing into my shoulders. "She needs a kidney, Mark. Soon." Mark stopped stirring. He put the spoon down and wiped his hands on a towel. "He knows my family. He knows the history. He knows every scar on my heart because he's the one who helped heal them." "Okay," he said slowly. "That's heavy. What are they going to do? Put her on the list?" "The list is too long," I said, staring at the grain of the wood table. "She needs a living donor." She looked at me, Mark. She didn't ask. She just looked at me. Mark walked over and pulled out the chair next to me. He took my hands. His hands were rough, warm, and real. "And what about Elena?" I let out a short, bitter laugh. "Elena?" Elena went to get coffee because she was exhausted by the news. "Sarah," Mark said, his voice firm. "You have 2 kids. You have a job. You have a life. Major surgery isn't just a weekend off. Recovery takes months." "Did they even mention testing Elena?" "No," I whispered. They didn't. The next week was a blur of appointments. I felt like I was moving underwater. I went to the transplant center for the initial blood work. I sat in waiting rooms filled with nervous families, flipping through old magazines, waiting for my name to be called. I did it because I loved my mother. Despite everything, the neglect, the criticism, the favoritism, she was still my mother. There is a primal part of you that wants to save the woman who gave you life, even if she never really knew how to love you. But the suspicion started to creep in during a Sunday dinner at my parents' house. My mother was resting on the sofa, looking frail. Elena was there, of course. She was sitting in the armchair, scrolling on her phone, while I was in the kitchen doing the dishes from the lunch I had cooked. I dried my hands and walked into the living room. "Mom," I said. "I did the blood type test. We're a match for blood type. But they need to do more tissue testing. It's invasive." "That's wonderful news, Sarah." Mom clapped her hands feebly. "I knew I could count on you. You've always been the strong one. The ox. The ox. A beast of burden. Useful for work, but not a prize pony like Elena." I looked at Elena. "Elena, did you schedule your appointment?" "The doctor said they prefer to test all siblings to find the best possible match." "Just because I'm a match doesn't mean I'm the best match." The room went silent. The air conditioner hummed. Elena looked up from her phone, her eyes wide and innocent. She looked at Mom, then at me. "Oh, Sarah," Elena said, her voice trembling slightly. I can't." "You can't?" I asked. "Why? Are you sick?" "No," she said. "But, me and Kyle, we're trying for a baby. You know that. We've been trying for months. If I donate a kidney, the surgery, the recovery, it would put that on hold for a year, maybe more. I'm 32, Sarah. I can't wait that long." I stared at her. She wasn't pregnant. She was trying. "Elena," I said, keeping my voice level. "Mom is dying. You're prioritizing a hypothetical baby over our actual mother." Before Elena could answer, my mother sat up. Her face flushed with anger. "Sarah. Don't you dare speak to your sister like that." Mom snapped. "She is under enough stress as it is. You have your children. You have your family. Elena is still building hers. How can you be so selfish?" I felt like I had been slapped. Selfish? I was the one getting poked with needles. I was the one missing work. I'm not being selfish, Mom, I said, my voice shaking. I'm just asking why the burden falls 100% on me. Again. Because you can handle it. Mom cried, tears spilling down her cheeks. You've always been tough. Elena is, she's sensitive. Her body doesn't handle trauma well. Remember when she got her wisdom teeth out? She was in bed for a week. This surgery would destroy her. I looked at my sister. She wasn't crying. She was looking at me with a small, triumphant smirk that vanished the second Mom looked her way. She knew she had won. She knew she didn't have to lift a finger because Mom would throw herself in front of the train for her. Fine, I said. I grabbed my purse. I'm going home. Wait, Mom called out, her voice softening into manipulation. Sarah, please. Don't punish me because you're jealous of your sister. I need you. You're my only hope. I walked out. I drove home with tears blurring my vision. A few days later, the real blow came. It wasn't the medical unfairness. It was the financial one. I took a half day off work to take my mother to a nephrology appointment because Elena was busy at a yoga retreat she needed for her mental health. While Mom was in with the doctor, I sat in the exam room holding her purse. Her phone buzzed. It was an email notification on the lock screen. I usually respect privacy. I really do. But the subject line caught my eye. It was from the family lawyer. Subject, updated will and trust, draft regarding the lake house. My heart skipped a beat. My parents owned a beautiful lake house about 2 hours away. It was their biggest asset. It was where we spent our summers as kids. Mark and I had talked about how, one day, it would be a great place for our kids to swim and fish. The phone buzzed again. Another preview popped up. Hi Joyce, I've made the changes. As discussed, the title of the lake house will be transferred to Elena immediately to avoid probate later, given your health condition. Let me know if you want to include Sarah in the cash distribution, or if that remains as previously discussed, capped at $5,000. I stared at the screen. The words swam before my eyes. Transfer to Elena immediately. Sarah, capped at $5,000. My mother walked back into the room, looking tired but hopeful. The doctor says my numbers are stable enough for surgery next month, Sarah. Isn't that great? She sat down and reached for her purse. I handed it to her, my hand feeling like it belonged to a mannequin. Mom, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Are you getting your affairs in order? Oh, yes, she said breezily, tucking a stray hair behind her ear. Just boring paperwork. Dad and I want to make sure everything is simple. You know, just in case. Right, I said. Simple. She was asking me for a kidney. She was asking me to cut open my body, risk my life, and shorten my own lifespan. And in return, she was disinheriting me. She was giving the family fortune to the daughter who couldn't be bothered to drive her to the doctor. That was the first clue. It wasn't just favoritism anymore. It was theft. But I still didn't have the full picture. I didn't know just how deep the betrayal went until the night before the final compatibility test. That was when I found out that my kidney wasn't just a gift. It was a transaction I hadn't agreed to. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling fan spinning in the dark. The image of that email notification burned into my retinas. Elena gets the house. Sarah gets capped at $5,000. It wasn't about the money. I know people say that, and they usually don't mean it, but for me, it really wasn't. Mark and I were comfortable. We didn't need their money. It was about the value they placed on us. To my mother, Elena was a jewel to be protected, encased in velvet and kept safe. I was a hammer. A tool. You don't leave your estate to a hammer. You use it until it breaks, and then you replace it. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I couldn't focus. I needed to hear it from her lips. I needed to give her one chance, just one, to explain herself, to tell me there was a mistake, or that I had misunderstood. I drove to my parents' house. It was a gloomy Tuesday, the sky a bruised purple color that threatened rain. When I unlocked the front door, I heard laughter. It was a sound that stopped me in my tracks. My mother, who yesterday had been too weak to walk to the car without assistance, was laughing. And Elena was giggling, that high-pitched, tinkling sound she used when she was getting her way. I walked into the living room. The coffee table was covered in fabric swatches and paint samples. Elena was holding up a square of pale blue silk. "Oh, this is perfect for the curtains in the master bedroom," Elena was saying. "It will catch the light off the lake so beautifully." "It's gorgeous, honey," Mom said. She was sitting in her recliner, a heating pad on her back, sipping herbal tea. She looked sick, yes, but her eyes were bright with excitement. They were redecorating the lake house. The house my mother hadn't even died to leave her yet. They stopped when they saw me. The laughter died instantly. Elena dropped the fabric swatch. Mom's smile faltered, then shifted into a look of concern that didn't reach her eyes. "Sarah," Mom said. "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at work?" "I took a sick day," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I walked further into the room, my shoes heavy on the carpet. "I see you're busy." "Oh, just dreaming," Elena said quickly, gathering the samples. "Just trying to keep Mom's spirits up. Distracting her from the surgery. By planning new curtains for the lake house." I asked. Elena froze. Mom stiffened. "We were just talking about the future," Mom said defensively. "Is that a crime?" "I saw the email from the lawyer, Mom," I said. I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just dropped the words into the space between us like stones into a pond. The silence that followed was deafening. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Mom's face went through a series of contortions, shock, fear, and finally, a cold, hard resolve. She set her tea down. "You were snooping on my phone," she accused, her voice sharp. "I was holding your purse while you were with the doctor," I said. The notification popped up. Transferring the title to Elena immediately. Sarah capped at 5,000. I looked at my sister. She refused to meet my gaze. She was picking at a loose thread on the sofa cushion. "So," I continued, "I just want to understand the arrangement. I go into surgery next month. I go under anesthesia. I get cut open. They remove an organ from my body, an organ I might need someday, and give it to you. I take 6 weeks off work to recover, unpaid for part of it. And in exchange, you cut me out of the family entirely." "It's not an exchange." Mom snapped. "It's not a business transaction, Sarah. I am your mother. You are saving my life because you love me, not because you want a payout." "Then why does she get everything?" I pointed at Elena. "Why does the daughter who refuses to help get the reward, while the daughter who is sacrificing her health gets nothing?" Mom let out a frustrated sigh, like she was explaining quantum physics to a toddler. "Because Elena needs it, Sarah. Look at you. You have Mark. You have a career. You're a survivor. You always land on your feet." She looked at Elena with a soft, pitying expression. "Elena isn't like you. The world is harder for her. She needs security. That house is her safety net. If Dad and I pass, who is going to take care of her? She is 32 years old." I said, my voice finally rising. "She has a husband. She is not a child. She is fragile." Mom yelled back, her face turning red. "And you are being petty." "I am dying, Sarah. My kidneys are functioning at 12%. And you are standing here arguing about a house. I thought you were better than this. I am better than this, I said, feeling tears prick my eyes. Not tears of sadness, but of pure, hot rage. I'm good enough to harvest for parts, but not good enough to treat with respect. Elena finally spoke up. Her voice was small, wavering. Sarah, please. Don't upset her. Her blood pressure. I turned on my sister. You could do it, Elena. You could donate. You aren't trying for a baby. I saw your Instagram. You were drinking margaritas last weekend. Elena's mouth opened and closed like a fish. It doesn't matter. Mom interjected. I don't want Elena's kidney. I want yours. The words hung in the air. Why? I asked. Why mine? Because, Mom said, looking me dead in the eye with a chilling honesty. Because you are the strong one. If Elena did it, she'd never stop complaining. She'd milk it for the rest of her life. You'll just do it, heal, and move on. It's what you do. I felt the breath leave my lungs. There it was. The naked truth. She didn't want my kidney because we were a better match. She didn't want it because she loved me. She wanted it because I was the path of least resistance. I was the service animal. Elena was the show pony. You don't ask the show pony to pull the plow. I looked at the fabric samples on the table. The pale blue silk. It looked expensive. So, I said quietly. If I walk out that door right now, if I say no, what happens? Mom's eyes narrowed. The mask of the frail, sick mother slipped completely, revealing the tyrant underneath. If you walk out that door, she hissed, don't bother coming back. If you let me die because of your greed and jealousy, you are no daughter of mine. I will make sure everyone knows what you did. I will tell your aunts, your cousins, everyone, that you let your own mother die over a house. It was a threat. A blackmail attempt wrapped in guilt. I looked at Elena. She looked scared, but she didn't say a word. She didn't offer to step in. She didn't say, Mom, that's not fair. She just waited for me to fold. She waited for me to do what I always did, apologize, fix it, and take the scraps. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking. Okay, I said. Mom relaxed instantly. She leaned back, a smug satisfaction settling over her features. She thought she had won. She thought, okay, meant, I submit. Good, Mom said. I knew you'd come around. We have the final tissue match test tomorrow at 9 a.m. Don't be late. I won't, I said. I turned around and walked out of the house. I didn't slam the door. I closed it gently, with a soft click. I walked to my car, the rain finally starting to fall, cold drops against my hot skin. Mom thought, okay, meant I agreed to her terms. She was wrong. Okay, meant I finally understood the rules of the game. And for the first time in my life, I decided I wasn't going to play by hers anymore. I sat in my car, gripped the steering wheel, and took a deep breath. I picked up my phone. I didn't call Mark. I called the transplant coordinator's private line. Hello, I said when she answered. This is Sarah. I'm calling about the final compatibility test tomorrow. I paused, watching the rain streak down the windshield, blurring the view of my parents' perfect, manicured house. I need to speak to the social worker, I said. Alone. The office of the hospital's social worker was small and windowless, but it felt like the safest place in the world. It smelled faintly of vanilla and old paper. There was a box of tissues on the desk, placed there with intention. Mrs. Gable, the social worker, was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and reading glasses perched on the end of her nose. She looked at me, then at her notepad, then back at me. Sarah, she said gently. You said on the phone that you needed to speak privately. Is everything all right? I sat there, gripping the armrests of the chair. My heart was pounding so hard I thought she could hear it. This was the point of no return. If I said the words, I couldn't unsay them. I can't do it, I whispered. Mrs. Gable nodded slowly. She didn't look surprised. You can't go through with the donation. No, I said, my voice gaining a little strength. But I can't tell them. If I tell my mother I'm refusing, she will destroy the rest of my life. She threatened to turn the entire family against me. She's disinherited me, actually. Gave everything to my sister. But she still expects me to give her my kidney because I'm the strong one. I felt the tears finally spill over. I'm not doing it out of love anymore. I'm doing it because I'm afraid of her. Mrs. Gable's expression hardened, not at me, but at the situation. She closed her folder. Sarah, listen to me very carefully, she said, leaning forward. Organ donation must be a gift. It cannot be a transaction, and it certainly cannot be the result of coercion or blackmail. If you are feeling pressured, we cannot proceed. Period. I know, I wiped my face. But if I say no, she'll know it was me. She'll punish me. Mrs. Gable offered me a small, conspiratorial smile. It was the first time in days I felt like someone was on my side. You don't have to tell her, she said softly. We have a protocol for this. It happens more often than you think. I can put a note in your file stating that there is a medical contraindication. We don't have to specify what it is. We simply tell the family that during the final screening, we found that you are not a suitable candidate for donation. That it would be unsafe for you to proceed. I stared at her. You can do that. You can lie for me. It's not a lie, Sarah, she said firmly. Stress and coercion are medical contraindications. Psychological safety is part of your health. If you are being abused into this, you are not a suitable candidate. We are protecting the patient. You. I let out a breath that felt like it had been trapped in my chest for 30 years. Okay, I said. Please. Do that. Done, she said, making a note. The doctor will inform the family this afternoon. You just have to play the part. Can you do that? I've been playing a part my whole life, I said. I can do it one more time. 2 hours later, we were all gathered in the doctor's office. Mom, Dad, Elena, and me. Mom was already planning the surgery schedule. So, if we do it on the 15th, Sarah can be out of the hospital by the 20th. The door opened. The surgeon, Dr. Evans, walked in. He looked serious. He didn't look at me. He looked straight at my mother. Mrs. Miller, he said. I'm afraid I have some difficult news regarding the donation. The room went still. Elena looked up from her phone. What is it? Mom asked, her hand flying to her throat. We've completed the final review of Sarah's test results, Dr. Evans said smoothly. Unfortunately, we've found a complication. For Sarah's safety, we cannot proceed with her as a donor. She is not a viable candidate. What? Mom shrieked. She turned to me, eyes blazing. What is it? What's wrong with you? You said you were healthy. I looked down at my lap, summoning every ounce of sadness I could muster. I don't know, Mom. He just said it's not safe. It's a minor anatomical issue with the renal arteries, Dr. Evans lied effortlessly. It's harmless to Sarah in daily life, but it makes surgical removal too high risk. We will not operate. Mom slumped back in her chair, looking like a deflated balloon. No, she moaned. No, no, no. This was the plan. This was the solution. She began to cry, harsh, racking sobs. I'm going to die. I'm going to die because my daughter's body is broken. Even in her grief, she managed to insult me. My body wasn't broken, it was just finally mine again. Then, the room went quiet. The sobbing stopped. Slowly, heavily, the attention in the room shifted. I raised my head. I looked at the doctor. Then I looked at my mother. And finally, I looked at Elena. Mom wiped her eyes. She turned her head slowly toward the golden child. Dr. Evans cleared his throat. Mrs. Miller, this does put us in a difficult position regarding the timeline. However, we haven't completed the screening for your other daughter. He looked at Elena. Elena is younger, Dr. Evans said. And if she is a blood match, there is a strong statistical probability she could be a candidate. We can expedite the testing. We could start today. I watched Elena's face. It was a masterpiece of panic. Her eyes were wide, her mouth slightly open. She shrank back into her chair, clutching her designer bag like a shield. Elena stammered. But the baby. We're trying. Mom looked at Elena. For the first time in my life, I saw Mom look at Elena not with adoration, but with calculation. The same calculation she had used on me just days before. Elena, Mom said, her voice trembling. Sarah can't do it. It's medically impossible. You're the only one left. But Mom, Elena whined, her voice pitching up. I'm scared of hospitals. You know I faint at the sight of blood. And my anxiety. I can't handle a major surgery right now. I just can't. So you'll let me die? Mom asked. It was the exact same weapon she had used on me. But this time, she was pointing it at the golden child. No. Of course not. Elena cried, looking around the room for an exit. But, maybe we can find a donor. Maybe we can pay for a private list. Dad, can't we pay someone? That's illegal, Elena, Dad mumbled, head in his hands. I need a kidney, Elena. Mom shouted, slamming her hand on the desk. I don't need excuses. I gave you that house. I gave you everything. And you won't even get tested. The air in the room was electric. The veil was lifted. It wasn't about love. It had never been about love. It was about utility. Mom loved Elena because Elena was her projection of perfection. But now, that perfection was useless to her. I need to think about it, Elena said, standing up abruptly. I need fresh air. I can't breathe. She rushed out of the room. Mom watched her go, her expression crumbling into something ugly. Betrayal. I stood up slowly. I walked over to my mother. I didn't hug her. I didn't comfort her. I'm sorry, Mom, I said calmly. I guess I'm just not useful to you anymore. I turned to the doctor. Thank you, Dr. Evans. For everything. I walked out of the room, leaving my mother alone with the realization that the daughter she worshipped was the one walking away, while the daughter she discarded was the one who had actually shown up. I found Elena in the hallway. She was pacing, frantically typing on her phone. Heaps of stress, she was muttering. Tell Kyle I'm coming home. She looked up and saw me. This is your fault, she hissed at me. You did this on purpose. You probably faked the test results just to put this on me. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, for the last time. I didn't fake anything, Elena, I said. But now you have a choice. You can step up and be the hero you've always pretended to be. Or you can walk away and show Mom exactly who you really are. I stepped into the elevator and pressed the button for the lobby. Good luck, I said as the doors closed. I went home to Mark and the kids. I felt lighter than air. I thought it was over. I thought I had escaped. But I was wrong. The fallout was just beginning. Because when a narcissist realizes their golden child is fool's gold, they don't just get sad. They get destructive. And the explosion was about to hit us all. The silence that followed my exit from the hospital lasted for 3 days. I expected angry texts. I expected guilt-tripping voicemails from my father. I expected Elena to blast me on social media. But there was nothing. Just a heavy, radio silence. I went to work. I made dinner. I played Legos with Leo. But I jumped every time my phone buzzed. On the fourth day, my dad called. His voice sounded thin, like paper. "Sarah," he said. "Can you come over? Your mother, she's home. She started dialysis yesterday." "Where's Elena?" I asked. There was a long pause. "Elena isn't here. She's taking some space." Taking space. That was code for running away. I drove to my parents' house. The atmosphere was completely different from the last time I was there. The curtains were drawn. The house smelled of stale air and medicine. Mom was in the recliner again, but the fabric samples for the lake house were gone. The table was bare, except for a pile of legal documents and a bottle of pills. She looked terrible. The grayness in her skin had deepened. The dialysis port was visible on her chest, a stark reminder of the reality she was now facing. "Hi, Mom," I said softly, standing in the doorway. She turned her head. Her eyes were sunken, dark circles bruising the skin underneath. But the anger in them, it was terrifying. It wasn't directed at me anymore. It was a cold, simmering rage that burned like dry ice. "She blocked me," Mom said. Her voice was a rasp. I blinked. "Who?" "Your sister," Mom spat the word out like poison. The minute I asked her to get tested, the minute I really pushed, she left. She sent a text saying I was toxic for demanding her body parts, and then she blocked my number. "She blocked your father." I sat down on the sofa, stunned. I knew Elena was selfish, but I didn't think she would completely abandon the ship the moment it started taking on water. "I'm sorry," I said. And I meant it. No mother should be ghosted by her child while facing a terminal illness. "Don't be sorry," Mom said, sitting up straighter. A flash of her old steel returned. "Be smart." I raised a fool, Sarah. I poured everything into that girl. Every penny. Every ounce of praise. And when the bill came due, she walked out on the tab. She reached for the papers on the table and shoved them toward me. "Read it," she commanded. I picked up the document. It was a transfer of deed. Quitclaim deed. Property, the lake house. Grantee, Sarah Miller. My hands shook. "Mom, what is this?" "I called the lawyer the morning she left," Mom said, her voice hard. "I told him to revoke the previous draft. Elena gets nothing. No house. No cash. No jewelry. Nothing." She looked at me, her eyes intense. "It's yours. The house. The savings. Everything. I'm signing it all over to you." I looked at the paper, then at the house I had grown up in. This was what I had wanted, wasn't it? Justice? Fairness? But as I looked at my mother, I realized something unsettling. "Why?" I asked. "Because you stayed," she said. "Because you tried. You were willing, even if your body failed you. You are the loyal one. You are the one who deserves it." I placed the paper back on the table. "Mom," I said slowly. "If the doctor hadn't disqualified me, if I had given you my kidney, would you still have given the house to Elena?" Mom hesitated. Just for a second. But in that second, the truth screamed in the silence. "That was the plan," she admitted, looking away. "Elena needed the help. You didn't." "So," I said, feeling a strange calmness wash over me. "You're not giving me this because you love me more now. You're giving it to me to punish her." Mom's jaw tightened. "I'm giving it to you because you are the only daughter I have left." It was a transaction. It was always a transaction. Before, I was the spare part and Elena was the trophy. Now, Elena was the enemy, and I was the weapon Mom was using to hurt her. Before I could answer, the front door flew open. I know you're in there. It was Elena. She sounded hysterical. She stormed into the living room, her hair messy, her face blotchy from crying or screaming. She wasn't wearing her usual designer clothes, she was in sweatpants. I got the email from the lawyer. Elena shrieked, ignoring me and marching straight to Mom. You can't do this. You can't cut me off. That house is mine. You promised. I promised my daughter, Mom said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. I don't have a daughter named Elena anymore. You're crazy. Elena yelled. I can't give you a kidney. I have anxiety. I have a life. You can't punish me for protecting my own body. It's my body. And it's my money. Mom shouted back, finding the energy to stand up. She swayed, grabbing the armrest for support. You want to protect your assets? Fine. I'll protect mine. You have lived off us for 30 years, Elena. You have never worked a hard day in your life. Well, welcome to the real world. Elena turned to me, her eyes wild. You did this. You poisoned her against me. You whispered in her ear. I didn't say a word, I said calmly. I just showed up. That's all I've ever done. You want the house. Elena accused, pointing a shaking finger at me. You've always been jealous. You manipulated the doctor to get out of the surgery, didn't you? And now you're stealing my inheritance. Get out, Mom said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was final. Mom, please, Elena's tone shifted instantly from aggression to begging. She fell to her knees, grabbing Mom's hand. The sudden switch was jarring. Mommy, I'm sorry. I was just scared. Please. Don't take the house. Kyle and we're in debt. We need the equity. If you take the house, we lose everything. I watched them. The toxic dance. The pull and push. Elena crying, Mom looking down at her with a mixture of disgust and power. This was my family. This was the dynamic I had spent my life trying to understand, trying to fix. And suddenly, looking at the deed on the table, the prize for winning this twisted game, I felt sick. I stood up. I don't want it, I said. Both of them stopped. Elena looked up, mascara running down her cheeks. Mom looked at me, confused. What? Mom asked. The house, I said. The money. I don't want it. Sarah, don't be stupid, Mom snapped. It's $500,000 in assets. Take it. No, I said firmly. I don't want it because it comes with strings attached. It comes with the expectation that I will be your caretaker, your emotional punching bag, and your soldier in this war against Elena. I'm not doing it. I walked over to the table and pushed the papers toward the center. I'm not a participant in this anymore, I said. I'm not the golden child, and I'm not the scapegoat. I'm just Sarah. And I'm done. You can't just walk away. Mom cried, panic rising in her voice. I'm sick. I need help. I will help you find a nurse, I said. I will bring you groceries. I will visit. But I will not be bought. And I will not fight my sister for your love or your money. I looked at Elena, who was still kneeling on the floor. You can fight for the house if you want, Elena, I said. But honestly, it's not worth the price tag. I turned to leave. Sarah. Mom screamed. If you walk out, you get nothing. Do you hear me? Nothing. I already have everything I need, I said. I walked out the door. The rain had stopped. The air smelled like wet pavement and ozone. I got in my car and drove away. I didn't look back at the house. I didn't look back at the window where I knew they were probably still arguing, two drowning people trying to pull each other under. I thought that was the end. I thought I had made my peace. But the universe has a funny way of balancing the scales. Because 3 months later, the phone rang again. And this time, it wasn't about a will. It was about a match. But not for my mother. The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was folding laundry. The number was familiar, it was the transplant center. I hesitated. I almost didn't answer. I thought it was them calling to tell me my mother had taken a turn for the worse, or that they were trying to guilt me back into the process. But I picked up. Hello. Hi, Sarah. This is Mrs. Gable, the social worker, the voice said. Do you have a moment? My heart skipped a beat. Is it my mother? No, Mrs. Gable said quickly. This isn't about your mother. This is about you. Do you remember when we spoke in my office? You mentioned that you weren't opposed to donation in principle, just not in that specific dynamic. I remember, I said, sinking onto the edge of the bed. Well, she continued. When we disqualified you for your mother, we kept your HLA profile in the National Registry as a non-directed donor. We usually remove it, but I had a feeling. And, Sarah, you're a perfect 6 of 6 antigen match for someone else. I sat there, holding a folded t-shirt, the fabric soft against my fingers. Who? I asked. I can't tell you the details yet, she said. But it's a young woman. 22 years old. She's been on dialysis for 4 years. She has a rare antibody profile, which makes finding a match almost impossible. You are her needle in the haystack. The room went silent. I looked out the window at the oak tree in the front yard, standing strong against the wind. My mother wanted my kidney as a tribute. She wanted it as payment for raising me. But this stranger just needed life. If I do this, I said slowly, will my family know? It's anonymous, Mrs. Gable promised. Unless you choose to reveal it. To the hospital staff, you're just donor number 4582. Okay, I said. The word didn't feel heavy this time. It felt like flying. Let's do it. The next month was a secret whirlwind. I told Mark, of course. He was worried, but when he saw the look in my eyes, the look of someone finally taking back control, he supported me. It's your body, he said, kissing my forehead. Do something good with it. The surgery was hard. I won't lie. The pain when I woke up was sharp and blinding. But the recovery felt different. There was no heavy cloud of expectation hanging over my hospital bed. There was no mother critiquing my pain tolerance. There was just Mark, holding my hand, and the nurses bringing me jello. 3 days after the surgery, Mrs. Gable came into my room. She was holding a letter. The recipient asked me to give this to you, she said. It's anonymous, of course. I opened the envelope with trembling hands. The handwriting was looped and messy, probably written from a hospital bed just like mine. To the person who saved me. I don't know your name. I don't know your face. But I know your heart. Because of you, I can go back to college. Because of you, I can dream about a wedding day. You gave me a future. Thank you isn't enough. I will live every day to make this gift worth it. I cried. For the first time in this entire ordeal, I cried tears of pure joy. But secrets in a small town don't stay secret for long. And this is where the public consequence, the reckoning, truly began. About 2 weeks after I got home, a local news station picked up the story. Apparently, the recipient's family was well known in the community. Her father was a beloved high school football coach in the next county. They went to the press to thank the anonymous angel who had saved their daughter. The news channel ran a segment. Local miracle, rare match saves coach's daughter. They didn't name me. But in the B-roll footage of the hospital, as the camera panned across the hallway, there was a shot of Mark walking out of a room. And on the whiteboard on the door, clear as day in high definition, it said, "Patient, Sarah Miller." It didn't take a detective to put it together. The phone calls started that evening. First, it was my nosy Aunt Linda. "Sarah," she gasped. "I just saw the news." "Was that Mark? Were you in the hospital? Did you donate a kidney?" I took a deep breath. I was done hiding. "Yes, Aunt Linda," I said. "I did. But..." She stammered. "But your mother told everyone you were medically unfit. She said your kidneys were deformed. She said you were devastated that you couldn't save her." "My kidneys are fine, Linda," I said calmly. I was a perfect match. I just donated to a young girl named Emily. "Then, why didn't you give it to your mother?" "Because," I said, my voice steady, "a gift has to be given freely. And Mom didn't want a gift. She wanted a sacrifice." I hung up. By the next morning, the story had spread through our extended family and church community like wildfire. The narrative my mother had carefully constructed, that she was the victim of a sick daughter, shattered instantly. Everyone knew the truth now. Sarah wasn't too sick to donate. Sarah chose to donate to a stranger rather than her own mother. To some, I was a villain. But to most, the people who actually knew my mother and Elena, it was a revelation. It confirmed every whisper, every rumor about how they treated me. The confrontation happened at the grocery store. It's always the grocery store, isn't it? I was in the produce aisle, squeezing avocados, still moving a bit slowly from the surgery. I turned around and saw Elena. She looked wrecked. Her roots were showing, and she looked like she hadn't slept in a week. She saw me and stopped dead. Her cart blocked the aisle. People were watching. Mrs. Higgins from the choir was pretending to look at bananas nearby. "You," Elena hissed. She marched up to me, her face twisting. "How could you? How could you embarrass us like that?" "Hello, Elena," I said. "Everyone is talking," she shouted, not caring about the scene. "Mom is humiliated. People are looking at her like she's a monster. They're asking why her own daughter would save a stranger instead of her." "Maybe they should ask her that," I said quietly. "You did this to spite us." Elena screamed. "You gave that kidney away just to prove a point. You'd rather save a nobody than your own flesh and blood." "I saved a girl who wanted to live, Elena," I said, my voice hardening. "Mom doesn't want to live. She wants to rule. And she wanted me to pay for the privilege of being her subject." I stepped closer to my sister. "And where were you?" I asked, loud enough for Mrs. Higgins to hear. "I was in surgery for 4 hours. I gave an organ. You wouldn't even get a blood test because you wanted to go on a yoga retreat. So don't stand here and lecture me about family duty." Elena opened her mouth, but no words came out. She looked around and realized people were staring. Not at me, at her. They were looking at the golden child with disgust. For the first time, she wasn't the victim. She was the villain. She spun around, abandoned her cart full of wine and frozen dinners, and stormed out of the store. I stood there, my heart pounding, but my head high. Mrs. Higgins walked over to me. She placed a hand on my arm. "That was a brave thing you did, Sarah," she whispered. "Giving to that girl. God sees that." "Thank you," I said. The consequences rippled out. My mother's friends, the ones who had sided with her, started to pull away. The narrative of poor Joyce and her useless daughter didn't hold water anymore. The truth was out there, ugly and undeniable. My mother was still on the waiting list. She was still sick. And she was now very, very alone. I thought that grocery store confrontation would be the last time I saw them. I was prepared to move on, to heal, to live my life with Mark and my kids. But the end of a family saga is never that clean. There was one final conversation to be had. One final goodbye. And it wouldn't happen in a store or a hospital. It would happen at the place that started it all. The lake house. I drove out to the lake house one final time in late October. The trees lining the driveway were on fire with autumn colors, burnt orange, deep red, and dying yellow. It was beautiful, but it felt melancholic. I wasn't there to claim the house. I was there to return the keys. I had carried a spare set on my keychain for 15 years, just in case. Just in case Dad got locked out. Just in case there was a storm. Just in case they needed me. I didn't need just in case anymore. When I pulled up the gravel driveway, I saw my mother sitting on the porch in a rocking chair, wrapped in a thick wool blanket. She looked small against the backdrop of the massive, empty house. Dad's car was gone. He was probably at the pharmacy or the grocery store, continuing his role as the silent caretaker. I stepped out of the car. The air was crisp and smelled of wood smoke and damp leaves. I walked up the steps. The wood creaked under my boots. "You came," Mom said. She didn't look at me. She was staring out at the gray water of the lake. "I'm just dropping these off," I said, holding up the keys. I didn't want to mail them. Mom finally turned to look at me. Her face was gaunt. The dialysis was keeping her alive, but it was taking a toll. She looked 10 years older than she had just a few months ago. "Elena hasn't called," Mom said. Her voice was flat. "Not once since the grocery store incident. She's in Cabo, apparently. Posting pictures of cocktails." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. "I heard about the girl," Mom said softly. "The one you gave it to. The coach's daughter." "Emily," I said. "Her name is Emily. Is she doing well?" "She's back in college," I said, a small smile touching my lips. "She's studying nursing. She wants to work in a transplant unit." Mom looked down at her hands. They were trembling slightly. "You gave a piece of yourself to a stranger," she whispered. "You cut yourself open for someone whose last name you didn't even know." "Yes." "Why?" Mom asked. She looked up, and for the first time, her eyes weren't angry. They were just confused. Genuine, painful confusion. "Why her, Sarah? Why not me? I'm your mother." It was the question that had been hanging between us for months. And standing there on that porch, with the wind blowing my hair across my face, I finally gave her the answer. "Because she didn't think she was entitled to it," I said gently. "She didn't demand it. She didn't threaten me. She didn't try to buy me with a house. She just wanted to live." I took a step closer. "You never wanted a daughter, Mom. You wanted a clone in Elena, and a servant in me. And when the servant said no, you didn't know how to love her anymore." Mom flinched. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "I did the best I could," she muttered, the old defensive reflex kicking in. "I raised you. I fed you." "I know," I said. "And I'm grateful for the life I have. But I built this life, Mom. Not you. Me. Mark. My kids." I placed the keys on the small table beside her rocking chair. The metal made a sharp clink sound against the glass top. "I'm done, Mom," I said. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done." "What does that mean?" she asked, her voice rising in panic. "Are you cutting me off? Like Elena?" "No," I said. "I won't block your number. If you have an emergency, if Dad needs help, I'll answer. Because that's who I am. But I'm not coming to Sunday dinner. I'm not spending holidays being compared to Elena. And I'm not waiting for an apology that's never going to come." I turned to walk away. "Sarah," she called out. I stopped on the bottom step, my hand on the railing. "I'm still on the list," she said, her voice breaking. It could be years. I know, I said, looking back at her one last time. I hope you get the call, Mom. I really do. I hope you get a kidney, and I hope you live a long time. Maybe long enough to figure out why both your daughters walked away. I got into my car and drove down the driveway. I watched her in the rearview mirror until the trees swallowed the house, and she was gone. I thought I would feel guilty. I thought I would feel that old, familiar pit in my stomach. But as I turned onto the main road, the sun broke through the clouds. I reached down and touched the scar on my side, just above my hip. It was a thin, pink line. It wasn't a mark of loss. It was a mark of liberation. It was proof that my body, my life, and my choices belonged to me. We are taught from the moment we are born that family is everything. We are told that blood is thicker than water, and that we owe our parents a debt that can never be fully repaid. But what happens when the cost of that debt is your own soul? What happens when family becomes a word used to control you, rather than comfort you? My sister, the golden child, spent her whole life being worshipped, only to crumble the moment real life demanded something from her. And I, the scapegoat, spent my life being told I wasn't enough, only to realize that I had enough strength to save a life, just not the one my mother wanted me to save. My mother is still waiting for a donor. Elena is still chasing a lifestyle she can't afford. And me? I'm having dinner with Mark and the kids tonight. We're having spaghetti. It's loud, it's messy, and it's imperfect. But it's real. And it's mine. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't to save your family. It's to save yourself from them. What would you have done? Would you have given the kidney to your mother, even after she betrayed you? Or would you have walked away like I did? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single one. And if this story touched you, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. It helps us share more stories like this one. Until next time, take care of yourselves. You are worth more than what you can give.